I set up the phone and ready to go. I'll give you my final thoughts as I head out here. Not my final thoughts. I got cut off my last video there, but I did want to discuss this issue because I know that I posted it, and I think it was on my personal Facebook page actually, that I said that, and I made the statement, maybe I should have posed it as a question, is waiting on a vaccine, are Christians who are waiting on a vaccine to return to church, to return to fellowship with their family and friends, who are refusing to gather with I would definitely say, who are refusing to gather with their family members who refuse to vaccinate. Is this a form of idolatry, modern day idolatry? And to me, it's without a question, there are spiritual aspects to that practice, or that faith in vaccines, or that faith in science. You are aligning yourself with the practices of idolatry. That is in alignment with idolatry, the definition of idolatry. I mean, just take one simple example. In the vaccine community, the pro-vaxxers, and especially vaccinologists in the medical community, it is often claimed that everybody in society has to take the vaccine. They should be forced to take the vaccine. They should be punished if they don't take the vaccine. That was a practice. Punishing people for not bowing to idols was a form of law in the governing bodies, the rulers of that time. The people of that time would punish and oftentimes even kill or imprison those who did not bow to the idols that the people, the majority of the community, the majority of the world in that area of the world would bow to. Because their thought process, the idolaters, those who worship pagan and false gods, what they would do is they would think that if we don't force everybody to bow to this idol, then it will anger this God and the God will punish us all. That is literally what they claim with vaccines. They claim that if everyone is not vaccinated, then the people who vaccinate will even be punished, will get sick, when somebody else doesn't, and that's a form of idolatry. That's a form of faith. That's a form of, let's punish other people for not practicing the same thing and having the same faith and trust in that system that we do. Let's punish them because if they don't do it, then my vaccine won't work. That is pure spiritual idolatry. That's what that is. So if you're in that group and you claim to be Christian, but you fully believe that you have to force vaccinate children and mothers and anyone who would dare not accept the vaccine that you wish to accept yourself, then you're practicing idolatry, plain and simple. Now, in the situation we're in right now, where there is a spirit of fear and there are lies and there are propaganda and there are media blowing up things. Again, nurse tells me today says, we have one person that's qualified as COVID. She really doesn't have COVID. She's been in there for a while in the ICU. We have very few people in the critical care units right now, and only one with COVID. And that's only one hospital. Again, that could be, well, all the COVID patients go to other hospitals, and that may be the fact. But they're allowed to take COVID patients, so it wouldn't be the case. They wouldn't be having this one COVID patient if it's truly a COVID patient, and they had to resort to isolating all the COVID patients in other hospitals. So, they're not being overrun, but we're being led to believe that. We're being led to believe this is a case-demic, and that there's so many cases, it's spreading like wildfire, and thus we've got to overrule constitutional rights, even religious freedoms. We have to do away with all that because, you know what? We need to do it until there's a vaccine. And again, the people saying from stages in television, saying we can't go back to normal life until we have a vaccine, what that is. And even the people who they may be younger Christians, not understanding how to walk in faith and understand the Word of God, and understand that the Bible is true from the beginning to the end of time. That's what I fully believe to know and be true. The Bible is true from the beginning of time to the end of time. So this entire last year, their claims that we cannot go back to normal life until there is a vaccine for this virus is a denial that the Bible is true. So any Christian claiming that we need to wait on a vaccine to be able to gather in congregations again, we are denying Christ. We are denying the provisions of God. We are denying the truth of the Word of God, because he says he has provided for us for all of our needs. And I know somebody's going to say, well, what about the diabetic who needs insulin? They need a hormone, and the hormone was designed and developed, or is designed for your body to produce that. And because of things like the hepatitis B vaccine that is known to cause autoimmune conditions and skyrocket type 1 diabetes following the implementation of hepatitis B vaccine on day 1 of birth, again, a denial that God would protect a child from that illness, which now we find out from other studies that babies can be born to mothers actually infected with hepatitis B, and the mothers protect the baby. God's provision by breastfeeding protects the baby against infections, active infections with hepatitis B. And that the vaccine doesn't lower the infection rates for those babies over a mother who does not give her baby the hepatitis B vaccine and breastfeeds them. So again, God provided, but we deny the provisions of God, and we say everybody needs that. But again, it goes back to the devil sneaks in and he takes away our faith in God, and he destroys our faith in God's provisions, thus enabling him in situations of medicine to harm our children, destroy their pancreas, and they become type 1 diabetics. But insulin is a hormone. It's not a pharmaceutical. We consider it a pharmaceutical because it's prescribed by a doctor, and it's considered technically a pharmaceutical, but it's not a pharmaceutical. It is a hormone. So again, this entire year, they've been denying that God had a provision for this time in our lives. Science should seek to prove the Bible true, and we'd be a whole lot further ahead right now than we are. A form of idolatry is when medical doctors say they're praying for a vaccine, but then they ignore the science of how effective. Again, I'm going to reiterate this because it seems to be one of the most effective things that has been put through a clinical trial, placebo-controlled or control groups, on the effectiveness of something we could do that God provided for us. The sun's shining on my face right now. I should roll down my window to get proper vitamin D, because I don't need, if it goes through a window, I don't get it. But that vitamin D is what God provided for us to have. And it was the lies of the devil that said the sun is harmful. Now, don't idolize the sun and lay there and, bake all day long and burn yourself. Then yeah, you're damaging tissue. You're kind of idolizing the sun. And, but the reality is God provided vitamin D. Vitamin D in clinical trials is saving lives. The fact that we're not implementing and utilizing what God designed our bodies to critically need for proper health and immune function, and the idea that it's going to take a vaccine and that vitamin D couldn't do it, that elderberry couldn't help, that echinacea or any immunosupportive herb that God created couldn't be what could be used to help us live longer, survive this virus or any infectious diseases, is a form of idolatry. We are saying pharmakeia is what is going to be necessary to save the lives, allow us to return to normal, allow us to go back to church with our family and friends. That's what I've heard some mayors say, is that we need pharmaceuticals. Read your stinking Bible. The great men of the earth. Now you got to ask, who are the great men of the earth who would deceive the world with sorcery? And sorcery in Greek text is pharmakeia. It's where we get these terms of pharmaceuticals, pharmacies, and people say these science inventions and all this stuff saved lives. And I'll admit, more than likely, if I really wanted to deceive people, I wouldn't just go around killing everybody. If I was saving people from drowning, but yet I was killing them on the back end later on and making profits both ends of that, people would see my good deeds and say, man, he's a good man. He's been jumping in that river and saving lives. But if I was still murdering people, people would still call me a murderer. Meanwhile, people would be like, I can't believe he did that because he was saving lives. I've seen him save lives. I've seen him do good things. That's the deception of the devil with pharmaceuticals. They will act as if, and at times even save the life of individuals. And I'm not saying the medical doctors are demonic here. All of them. Some of them, yes. Some of them are deceived themselves. You know, the love of somebody to save the life of an individual, but yet deceived in teaching people what they've been deceived into believing is one of the most effective tools the devil uses. Let me roll my window up here. The devil is very strategic, and we need to realize that and understand that. He is drawing people away from the church. He's drawing families apart. He's separating people right now. And he's using people who claim and may even be in a state of desire to do good, a desire of do what's right, to do what they believe would be the Christian thing to do, but yet it is a denial of God's provisions. If science would search through the things that God has created already, we would be far and above with more people on this earth right now having been never fallen ill. And if they did fall ill, if we would have utilized the things that God provided, like again, vitamin D, that showed a huge improvement in reducing ICU rates, a 2% ICU rate in already hospitalized patients if given vitamin D immediately upon admission, with COVID, with pneumonia already, 2% ICU rate. Meanwhile, it's a 50% ICU rate in those not given vitamin D. And death rate was around 7.6%. Folks, the fact that the medical community, the pharmaceutical community, and people are being led to believe that vitamin D isn't what people need right now is a form of idolatry. When they say that it's only going to be a pharmaceutical, a drug, a man-made invention is going to save people's life and end this pandemic. That the pharmaceuticals and those companies who have killed people, and that was my point earlier in saying that if somebody's saving lives, jumping in the river, saving people from drowning, but yet they murder people on the back end, they're still a murderer. And that's exactly what the pharmaceutical companies are. They are murderers by definition. They steal from people, they kill people, they are destroying lives, and they know it, and they've been found guilty of it, yet they continue doing it. But nobody in their right mind would say that, oh, because anybody, and I'll use myself as an example. If I was jumping in the river and saving lives every day possibly, but yet I was still killing other people, by definition, I would be a murderer and I should go to jail. Whether you believe I would deserve the death penalty or not, I am still a murderer in the eyes of God, and I would still be a murderer in the eyes of everybody in society. Even if I saved lives before and did good things before. But we don't do that. We hold the pharmaceutical industry in some sort of bubble of forgiveness. Like they're in an arena all to themselves where society says they need complete forgiveness for the crimes and murders and thievery and destruction they've committed against children and mothers and fathers and grandparents. Because they do good somewhere else, we have to forgive them and just take a little bit, not all, just a little bit of their money from them when we find them guilty for murder. How in the world are we defining them any different than we would for an individual committing that type of crime? That is idolatry. All right? That is idolatry. And again, people are being led into a level of physical, spiritual action that is mirroring what is idolatry. We claim God didn't provide over this last year, that science and pharmaceuticals, the pharmakeia system, is going to provide. They are claiming they are the savior. Let me give you one more example of how the medical community, including the World Health Organization, at their meetings, did a presentation, and I posted this image the other day, and I could probably do it again. And when I do, I sent it to my pastor, and nothing has been response. It's just so sad to me. Another form, before I go to that image, remember the image, another form of idolatry is when pastors will preach from the pulpit that abortion is wrong because those are God's children in the womb of that mother. That as soon as they are conceived, it is a child of God and deserves to be born and given the opportunity to live their life. That abortion is wrong. They'll preach that, but yet when the flu vaccine has been established by government CDC funded scientific studies of vaccinated and versus unvaccinated mothers to cause, I believe it was a 6.7 times, is around a 7 times the increased rate of spontaneous abortion if the mother received the flu vaccine in the first trimester. There is no science that trumps that study whatsoever. They cannot claim that it was a fluke because the science they've done on that always increases the likelihood of harm, especially in the first trimester. But preachers, pastors, won't preach against the use of that vaccine, at least in the first trimester. Christians will say, nah, I believe the good is still there, but you're killing children, and the science doesn't say that the benefits outweigh the risks. There has never been a study showing that more babies are alive and born today because of vaccines. In fact, the Gates Foundation published research in Africa showing that in comparison to a saline placebo, one of the only 2 saline placebo-controlled trials done on pregnant women with the flu vaccine, that more babies weren't born to mothers who received the flu vaccine. More children were dead, and more children were even dead at 6 months. But mothers are given this lie that their children will have a better opportunity to live if they get the flu vaccine while pregnant, because it'll give their child antibodies against the flu during those susceptible younger months. And they're denying the provisions of God when they teach mothers that. What are they doing? They're denying that all they have to do is take care of their health, not be deficient in the raw materials that God made your body to need. And if mothers are doing that, then guess what? We are saving thousands and tens of thousands and millions of lives if mothers are able to breastfeed their babies. And if we support them in that and teach them what God designed their body to do, we would have many more lives, many more children alive today with their mothers and families. But we deny God by saying the vaccine is what's going to do that. And we deny God and say it's not as important to breastfeed your child. The medical community, the pharmaceutical company does that, all right? I've got to get going. The other one was the image. The World Health Organization actually put on a PowerPoint presentation was in vaccines we trust. They took the statement of "in God we trust" and put on their presentation, teaching medical physicians to have this mindset. It said, "in vaccines we trust." They are attempting to replace the provisions of God with vaccines. Y'all, that's a word right there. Now, people who are living in fear may take this as if I am yelling at them, that I'm condemning them for that. Shoot, I've had to check myself because a pastor's preached from stage that says, hey, if you're hunting on Sunday morning rather than being in church with your family, then you've got an idol, all right? And trust me, when the weather's right, I want to be in the deer stand, and I've had all the opportunities to say the excuses I could use is, you know what? I want to be out there during the perfect weather situations. It's on a Sunday morning. I got to be out there. But you know what? I go to the stand and I get out of the stand and I get home and I get my butt and my family to church. And that's what I hope other people will do. And I hope people will say this Christmas, they'll say, forget you governments who want to say that I can't gather to celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ with more than 10 people because you want me to believe that God didn't provide for me and my family. But people in fear, I need to have more grace and forgiveness for them because I understand they are being led astray and deceived by a spirit of fear. And I want nothing more than to take that spirit of fear and demolish it and destroy it with truth. And that's why I try my best to show the science that says we could have been saving lives, we should have been saving lives, had we used the provision of God from the beginning. And if they could see that and they could understand that, they would realize that they could walk without fear when they have faith in God and utilize the provisions of God and forget what the pharmaceutical system is trying to attempt to make them believe. Y'all, I love you. Spread this. Please, you got to share it.